All right, well, um, I have 9 o'clock, and we were supposed to have about between 20 and 25 folks that had signed up for this particular webinar, but we've only got 7 on the line, so we may just wait just a minute or two before we get started. But for those of you that are already on, again, we've got the bit.ly there on the slide that if you'd like to click on that and follow the links with us, you're more than welcome. If you have any questions throughout the day, we do have a questions tab there on the webinar tool. So if you have any questions, just type those in. That way we can keep a recording of those as well to post as well with the webinar. We are recording this webinar. If for any reason you need to share this with your superintendent or someone else in your district, it'll be recorded for you. I'll send out an email later this afternoon on the Tech Directors listserv with links to the recording as well as links to anything else that we might need to share as part of this process as well. We've got myself, I'm Nathan Craver with NCDPI. Many of you guys know that I work a lot with the DLMI, the Digital Learning Media Inventory, and we are moving the progress rubric over into that system, and we'll go over more of that towards the end of the webinar or end of the presentation. And then we've also got Dr. Jenny Korn from the Friday Institute here with us as well, and she's going to go over a little bit of the how did we get to where we are today and some of the background and logistics of the rubric itself, and then I'll go over more of the technical portion with the system. So Jenny, if you're ready to get started, we can go ahead and get going here, and I'll just turn it over to you. Just let me know when you're ready to click through the slides, and I can advance them for you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Nathan, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Great. So welcome, like I said, happy Monday. I am excited about this new opportunity with the Digital Learning Progress Rubric, and also we're really interested in getting input from representatives from the districts and will about how we roll out and share out data from the rubric, and we'll be letting you guys know how you can nominate a district director from your region to serve on that kind of committee to help us make those decisions. My name is Jenny Korn. I am the Director of Evaluation Programs with the Friday Institute. I co-lead the Digital Age Learning Initiative work with Virgil Albahari over at the department. My team at the Friday Institute is the Research and Evaluation team, and we do a lot of work with Nathan, with other folks over at DPI. I'm really trying to set the agenda around strategic use of data and systematic continuous improvement processes around digital learning, around the Digital Learning Initiative. And I appreciate, Nathan, your leadership on this, helping to transition. That's something we've been getting over the past however many years, gotten a lot of feedback about why can't we submit this online? We need an online tool to be able to do this, the rubric. And so kind of hats off to Nathan for leading that work at the department and getting the state something that will be an online version of this.
Hey, Jenny, we're getting a little bit of feedback on your microphone. It sounds like you're kind of coming in and out a little bit.
Okay. Maybe, okay, I could call in.
Well, it sounds like it might be sounding better right now. So let's just keep going, and if it doesn't stay this way, we'll call in.
Okay, great. Well, so good. Yeah, if you want to go ahead, Nathan, with the slides. So as many of you might have heard, we did a presentation to the state board beginning of March, I believe, and giving them an update. And they have invited all districts and charter schools to complete the Digital Learning Progress Rubric this spring. If you guys, many of you will remember from when the Friday Institute and the department were working on the digital learning plan, we had all 115 LEAs and 120 of the 120 charter schools at the time complete the rubric in between March and June of 2015. So this is kind of 3 years later, a check-in, wanted to see what was working really well, give us an opportunity to think kind of from a statewide perspective where we needed to be prioritizing resources moving forward. And so after we heard that from the state board, we've been working really closely with, Nathan has been leading this on the department side. Sarah Weiss and Melinda Faber have been kind of leading it from the Friday Institute side. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but so there has always been a lot of emphasis put on the rubric that we as a state, the work that we did at the Friday Institute with the digital learning plan in partnership with many of the districts and school leaders around the state, developed this digital learning progress rubric. Now we're at a place where we really want to get input, not into the actual, like the instruments and the language in the instrument itself, but really to help us finalize, sorry, there's some construction guys outside my office door. Anyways, so we really wanted to create a rubric data steering committee to help guide our processes for how the rubric is scored, how those scores are categorized, and then how the data is shared publicly. So what we'd like to do, what we've just gotten approval to do, is to create an NCDLI Rubric Data Steering Committee. This is a short-term kind of appointment, and between May and August, maybe September, but kind of think about it as like a 4-month appointment. We would like 10 to 13 members. So the way we got to that number was 1 representative from each of our state board regions and 2 charter representatives. We are looking for nominations for those representatives. We would like them to be district technology directors, and then the charter school, whoever is the lead technology person, whoever is most deeply engaged in the work of the rubric and cares the most about how the rubric, the person that would be dealing most with how rubric data is shared publicly. If you want to nominate anybody from your region or yourself, please email Nathan and let him know, and we're going to move relatively quickly to get that steering committee established. We're also going to ask a few members from our NC Ties / North Carolina COSN board if they would be interested in, since they serve in a leadership way across and represent kind of across the state. But we are really looking for this group to not just give feedback, but to like vote on how data is shared, to really help the department and the Friday Institute think about what would be most useful from a district perspective. And so anyway, so we're kind of announcing that today. And you'll see there's some points throughout the presentation where we say, this is our proposed, a proposed idea, but will, really open to that feedback from the field. So as you guys know, we, like I said, during the 2015 academic year, we had every district in the state and 120 charter schools complete the progress rubric that we used during the digital learning plan. During that process, we had an opportunity for folks that were filling it out and give us feedback about the rubric itself, about the instrument itself, about the key elements, and so we took all that feedback from the field and we revised the rubric. We spent an enormous amount of time here at the Friday Institute and at the department, kind of taking that feedback and making changes and edits, and then we sent it out again. And so what we're working with now is the updated version. We finished, I don't know the exact date. It was like a year later that we finalized the revisions, and that's what everybody has been using for the past 2 years. But we feel really good about the work that went in, the thinking that went in, and we're not saying that it's done forever. We will continue to update and improve it as technology improves, as our infrastructures improve, as priorities around different frameworks for personalized learning improve. But it's the same version you guys have been using for the past 2 years that we're asking everybody to submit their scores to this online system that Nathan's going to talk about. So typically, there's no changes here. We've got the 5 main areas we've had for a while now. And I will say that the input that we've gotten from the field has absolutely made this tool one of the most recognized ones, honestly, nationally. We get calls all the time from other states, other districts, asking about using this rubric, asking about how could they adopt it locally, what processes did we use. And so, again, just wanting to say how grateful we are to everybody for giving us this feedback and being able to develop a tool that as a state that we've been able to see a lot of progress. We've been able to see a lot of districts using it locally to make their own planning decisions around digital learning. So as you see, there's the 5 main areas, and then there's these, and we call those, the 5 main areas, and then there's 25 key elements underneath each of those 5 areas. So this is just a little bit of background about where the rubrics were based on. So I'm sure you guys will remember the impact model, the North Carolina Learning Technology Initiative, the DPI's instructional standards. We put all these pieces together, and then again, getting input from folks in the field, developed the rubric, both version 1 and then now this revised version. And the intent of the rubric was always as a framework for schools and districts to design and reflect on progress. And then for, as a state, all of us to come and build consensus on what were the strategies and measurement and outcomes intended for our digital learning initiative as a state. And really wanting to emphasize this notion throughout the rubric, technology is just one part of it. It is the infrastructure, it is the foundation, but it's really about the teaching. We've got 4 other elements really focused on what teachers do in classrooms with our students. If you guys, I'm sure, there it was, February 2016 was when we revised it. So for the district version 2.0, this, we collected all the data in the spring of 2015. We got tons of feedback, and then we did kind of a revised version that we shared publicly February 2016. Based on feedback, again, from many of the districts and principals actually around the state. They said the district tool is awesome. We're using it every day at the district level, but it really does not, it's not something that a school can just adopt and use and it applies. So once again, we took that district rubric, we got some working teams, some volunteers from the districts around the state to help us try to think about, well, if this is what we're saying districts should be doing, these are the district responsibilities for transitioning to digital learning, what really is the responsibility at the school level? And so we spent, we spent 6 months revising and creating a rubric that was really specific to the school experience. And then we, based on that, we got some feedback from our charter community that said, we're kind of somewhere in between. We've got some pieces that are really more the purview of a school district, but we also feel a lot of connection to the school level rubric. So in partnership with our charters and the Department of Public Instruction, we created, again, took us about another 6 months to revise that kind of school level version of the rubric and create a charter school version that was released in March 2017. And here's kind of an overall timeline where you can see basically what I just talked about. You can see this has taken up a lot of all of our times for a long time. So back in 2015, the rubric data was used by districts. So a lot of the districts used it to reflect and build on their own local transitioning, to guide, to be able to report out to their local school board. And then at the state level, we used it to plan professional development, to think about what the priorities were for both a policy and a funding aspect for the digital learning initiative statewide. It was also kind of a snapshot. Talk a lot about that, about for the legislature, for the state board. It really helped us to say kind of, this is where we are in May 2015. We used that data, we checked it against a lot of the statewide data we were already collecting from MCNC, from teacher working conditions, from the DLMI, and really tried to think about, was there a lot of kind of was the data reflective of one another? And to be honest, I've said this before in presentations, but I think that the rubric work is some of the strongest work I've ever been involved in. And I'm really, really proud of the amount of time and attention and commitment that we've all had in both developing the instrument and then using it to make decisions both locally and at the state level. I think it gives us a way to all kind of speak from the same language, the same playbook, and know that we're all kind of moving together towards the same goals. And we really are wanting to shift and continue to make connections between our school and district level strategic plans and the digital learning progress rubric as a way to feed in and provide data to your local strategic plan. And honestly, we've been in conversations, Nathan and I have, and others at the department, as how could we think more systemically about the digital learning progress rubric, as well as some of those other data sources that I mentioned, feeding into the overall state board strategic plan as they revise the metrics that they've identified for success. So for this year, like we said, the state board has asked us to get the data, to have everybody in the state fill out the rubric once again. But our recommendation for you all, and many of you already do this, that was something we wanted to make sure you all know. If you have filled out the rubric in the past academic year, whether the past for maybe one of the digital learning progress, for one of the digital learning grants, competitive grants, if you filled it out for a Golden Leaf grant, if your district just does it every year. However, if you filled the rubric out already, we just are asking that you submit those scores. We want them to accurately kind of reflect what's going on in your district. It's really important about getting, and I think all of you have had a lot of experience in this now, so I'm not going to belabor this point about getting the right people in the room, making sure that you have individuals' different perspectives feeding into your rubric score, we think is really important. And then also making sure that you're using, that you're being able to use these, have those conversations locally, which to me is one of the richest parts. So some data sources that you could consider to kind of feed in and figure out as you're doing your rubric self-assessment is the DLMI, teacher working conditions. If you guys have used either a student technology needs assessment, your observation classroom walkthrough tools. Also, I'm a huge proponent of doing, collecting some qualitative data, whether for your teachers, your students, your principals, having kind of these conversations about where you are can absolutely feed into your rubric. And then also looking at your records of district, school, and classroom level activities, but really making this a data-based exercise and trying to get an accurate picture of where your district is right now among those 25 different key elements. And also thinking about it from the primary purpose for strategic planning purposes. So this is just some recommendations how when I'm working with districts and schools from around the state, how I have encouraged them to think about their rubric. One is eating the elephant one bite at a time. It is a big instrument. There's a lot of information in it. So not trying to overwhelm and tackle all 25 elements at one time. Really trying to just, what could we work on this year? Similarly, we've been talking as we've been doing professional development with districts all over the state, using the rubric and then within each key element, asking them to think about maybe pick one sprint goal and one marathon goal to work on, because some of these things are pretty, they're relatively easy to add some policies or kind of to, trying to think of one that's like, around leadership, around personnel might be something that takes a little bit longer, but you might be able to focus in on one element within digital content or within data and assessment that you could do within a single school year. I also think we recommend that you think about measurement tools aligned to your own rubric, your needs, trying to think about what data do I really need to answer this and to respond to this area of the rubric. Again, really encouraging everyone to think about who needs to be brought in into the process, and then using those rubric results to tell your story or advocate for your district's needs. We heard stories where districts would take, because we had everybody fill it out, districts were able to see, and we shared these rubric reports at the district level that shared where you were compared to other districts that looked like you, that were your similar size or your similar region or your similar free and reduced lunch. And a lot of tech directors and superintendents and principals were able to use that information to advocate. To advocate with their local school boards, with their county commissioners, even with their parents and teachers about how to be strategic and prioritize things to maybe help to improve locally. And I'm sure many of you have seen kind of the original version of this that the Friday Institute and DPI team use, this idea around kind of making sure this whole framework approach. What we're trying to articulate here is that in order to have a really successful digital learning initiative, that you need to be looking at every one of the major areas of digital learning. You need to be focused. You need to have some strategies around leadership, tech and infrastructure, content and instruction, professional learning, and data and assessment. And if you're missing one of those pieces, you could have resistance if there's not someone kind of setting the vision. If your technology is not working and the wireless is going out, you could really have a lot of frustrated teachers. If they don't have access to high quality digital content, it could create a lot of anxiety among your staff, among your parents. Without access to professional learning, teachers not knowing what they're supposed to be doing absolutely creates a lot of confusion. And then if you don't have the data systems in place, really figure out, measure progress and set your goals and have these metrics so you know you're having some success, it really could create a lot of false starts. So just this idea that it really is, it's a broad model that really is this, the way that we've set up the rubric, the intent of it is that each one of these pieces is an equally important component of the rubric and of a successful digital learning initiative. So here specifically for, this is about submitting your scores, and Nathan's going to talk a little bit more about the kind of the technical side of that. And this has not changed. So we've got this early, developing, advanced, and target. It's the same as it's always been. So you'll go in and and Nathan will show you how that comes out. But so this is the scoring for the 25 key elements is exactly the same as it's always been. Here is where this is going to be one of the focus areas of the rubric data steering committee, is helping us figure out what the categories for scoring the 5 main areas. Right now, our proposed categories are that early, and we've divided it up into 0.75. Since the rubric goes from 1 to 4, we just evenly divided it. So for early, it would be 1 to 1.75. And the way that we're doing this is different. So in the past, in the last version of the rubric, when we collected the data from the districts, we took your total score across the 25 elements and divided by 25. But by doing that, it's like leadership got a bigger piece of the puzzle because they have 7 elements, and professional learning and data and assessment only had 3, so they weren't weighed as heavily. And we all know that leadership is important, but so is professional learning, content and instruction, tech and infrastructure, and data and assessment. So what we're intending to do this time, after some deep discussions, is that you will get an average score for each of the main areas. So here's an example. So if leadership, you scored yourself a 1 for vision, shared vision, 3 for personnel, a 2 for communication and collaboration, 1 for sustainability, 2 for policy, 1 for continuous improvement, and 3 for procurement, you would have an average of a 1.9, which would give you an overall leadership score. Right now, what we're thinking is it would be developing. But again, this is one of the pieces that we want to make sure that we vet and talk through and get support from the steering committee. So that's, again, this is our proposed. We had a couple of other ideas, but this is where we've landed for now. But your peers will make the decision about what this looks like and what the categories are. So this kind of just shows you overall. So if for leadership, so this is the rest of your scores. You had it, we're developing for leadership, advanced for tech and infrastructure, developing for professional learning, content and instruction was advanced, and data and assessment was early. Your overall rubric score, an average, so these are all averages, the 1.9 like we just showed you on leadership. And the average of your tech and infrastructure is 2.5, your average from professional learning. And then we were gonna average those averages to get your overall rubric score. So you would be developing in this example. Again, proposed scoring system. This is one of the pieces that we really want to dig into with that steering committee. So it's really important you guys are thoughtful and provide recommendations and nominations of folks that could really help us figure out what would be most useful to the local district technology director, to the superintendent, and then also feeding into an overall state system in the most fair way possible. So we have electronic versions of the progress rubric at on the DLI website, which is here, linked here. And then I think I'm turning it over to Nathan now to talk about some of the technical pieces. I don't know, Nathan, do we have time for questions now, or should we just hold them to the end in the chat?
We can do it either way. We haven't had any come in, but if you guys have questions, feel free to put those in the question section of the webinar, and we can address them as needed. I think this next section won't take very long, so if questions come in during that time, we can answer them at the end.
Great. Well, I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. All right. So I'll jump in now. And so as Jenny mentioned, one of the big requests was, would there be a way to have an electronic version? We heard this a lot across the state, to where schools could come in and put in their information and have the scores calculated for you, have access to that data, to be able to update it as needed and that kind of thing. So one of the things we really wanted to do was build a way for you all to do that. And since we have the digital learning and media inventory system, we felt like that would be a good place to put this, because it's password protected. You have user accounts already set up, and we can give access to that way, to that system, and provide access. And eventually down the road, one of the things that we're working on, it won't be ready for this first version, but one of the future things that we'd like to do is to be able to connect the digital learning and media inventory data to the rubric. So there's a question in there about, and this is the simplest one for me to use, about in there about ITFs and school library media coordinators and the number per school. So we asked that question in the DLMI. So if we were able to connect that DLMI data to the rubric, whether it's just to have that report on the screen, so it's right there for you to access, or even be able to populate some of the check boxes based on your averages in the DLMI, that might be something that would save you time as well. So that's down the road. That's sort of the goal, is to connect those in the system. But if you already have a DLMI account, you are connected to the rubric account as well. So the address for the rubric is just schools.nc.gov/DL rubric. You're more than welcome to click on or to go to that link and log in as yourself, or you can just follow along. The rest of the slideshow is screenshots of different components of the rubric, and I may jump back and forth between the rubric and the slideshow. So I'm actually going to go into the system just so I can sort of click and show you guys how it works. When you log in, it is part of the DLMI system, but to let you know you're on the right location, the picture up here on the left should look like the rubric. or should have the words rubric in it, just so you know. If it's the digital learning and media inventory, you'll see this blue picture up there in the top right hand side. So once you log in, my screen will look a little bit different than yours because I have access to as an admin for the state. So I see a few more buttons than you do. If you are an LEA administrator, when you log in, you will see the LEA rubric menu button up here at the top, as well as the school rubric as at the top. If you are a charter administrator or a charter user, you should see just the charter rubric menu up here. And then also every administrator in here should see, and when I use the word administrator, I don't mean principal, I mean system administrator, so you're in charge of inputting the data. But when you log in, you should see this reports tab as well, and we're just kind of going to go through quickly to show you what you have. You can either click Start LEA or click on the LEA rubric, whichever one. It should take you to the same place if you're charter, Start Charter. So when you click on that, it will take you to your school, but because I'm a state user, I have to pick a school district. So the first thing you'll notice when you log in is this landing page where we are asking you who participated in the self-assessment. So this is going to give us sort of an idea of what types of folks were included in the process. Last time when we filled this out, it was so new to everyone. A lot of school districts use different methods for filling this out. Some folks met with principals or school leadership teams. Other folks had a smaller group. So this is just going to kind of give us an idea of who participated. Just as a note here, just to let you guys know, only one person has to fill this out online. So only one submittal per district. So one person will be responsible for inputting the data. But once you fill this in, you will put your information in here, let us know who all was completed in the process, and you'll go through the steps. And I'm just going to kind of click through and show you what happens. So we do have recommendations for how we want you to put this in. I don't want to save this for ants and counties, but we want you to put it in, and then whatever their job title is, and then so on and so forth. When we click to the next slide or to the next section, you'll see this is basically just the same process as filling it out online. You come in, and there is one nice feature about this online version. So let's say you're reading through this L1 and you're talking about your district leadership team and your target. You have a diverse representative district leadership team with parents, teachers, and community members. On this one, if you click target, it will automatically check the rest of the boxes for you. So you just need to check the box at the highest level for each section, and what it will do is populate those for you as well when you click Save Changes. So as you guys know, when you scored this last time, it works just like the teacher observation instrument, where in order to get a target for this section, you have to have all of the target boxes checked. Same for advanced. If you, for some reason, like in this particular one, I have target for this row advanced and developing, but because I could only check early for this last row, then this would give this overall L1 an early score. If you happen to have if you run across any words or any things that you're not sure about what these mean, we do provide a link to a glossary. So when you click on that, it's just going to pop open the glossary window for you to read through any terms that might be confusing or questions that you have. We also have a link in here that takes you to your charter or district profile. So if you want to find some data that goes along with this, it will take you here to a pop-up window, and it's going to make you sign in. But right now, for whatever reason, it's taking a minute to load, so I won't waste our time on that, but that will take you to the DLMI profile. When you're ready, you can just hit Save Changes, and you notice now my box is checked to show that I do all of those all the way up to target. If you make a mistake or if you have an issue and say I didn't really mean to check this box. I meant to be developing, or after discussion you change your mind, you can come in and uncheck the boxes here so that nothing is complete, and we can go back and change that. Now, I do want to point out one component here. You'll notice over here on the left that my bar went from red to green on the navigation window. Green lets you know this is a section that I have completed. Red is a section that I haven't started, and it will turn black if you have checked some of the boxes but not completed all of them. Now, one thing to note is it stayed green and there's no boxes checked. If for some reason you look at a row or a key component here, L1 shared vision, and say we're not even on the rubric, which might happen, if you hit save changes, that's going to show that you completed it, and it is here for you to be scored as though you weren't on the list, but it does default to early. So if you if you come in here and check this box and don't feel like you're on here, you're still going to get a 1 point score for this row. We also have provided a place for you as well to put any notes. So, Jenny talked about linking evidence. So if you've got STENA, School Technology Needs Assessment on, that you referenced for this, feel free to note that in here or put a link to something that will help know that you scored. If that will help you in your planning process, add notes as well. That will be there for you as well. We've also added up here on the top right side of the screen progress completion. So just to let you know about how much you have left to finish. And as you go through this, each of these will turn green. Once you have all of them finished, you will see, and I will jump back into the webinar just for this portion. Once you've gone through and checked your boxes and go to the next page, at the end, once you've completed, you will see a sign-off section where it just talks about, it gives you the team members completing this section again, as well as whoever is responsible for signing this off. It may be your tech director, but whoever your superintendent or deems as the person that's responsible for submitting this just needs to put their information in. And the date of the rubric completion will automatically populate as today, but if you're entering the data today and say you filled this out, like Jenny mentioned, as part of the rubric or as part of one of the grant applications, you could say you could change it back to we completed this on March 15th as part of the grant application process. It will accept whatever date. So, in this situation, if you filled it out in the last school year, this school year, and you want to say we filled it out at the beginning of the year so we could track our progress, then feel free to put that August date or whatever. So you can change the date, but it does default to the date that you're actually hitting the Save Changes button. Also, just staying in this rubric so you can actually, or in the presentation so you can see what happens. If you were to click that Reports tab, right now, all that's available in the Reports tab is sort of a summary of what you checked. So it just sort of gives you the whole rubric on one page. So if you wanted to print that off without having to go page by page or download the report at the end so you could see where you were, this just prints this off for you, all sort of summarized on one page. Eventually, what will be there once we meet with that steering committee will be a summary of your scores. We also have it so that, when you finish out this school year's rubric and next school year's rubric, we'll be able to, you'll be able to compare from year to year to track progress on the reports. So we do have scoring reports. All the scores will be calculated for you. And you'll be able to see not only just the LEA version, but if your schools fill this out, your schools will show up. So if you're an LEA administrator and you have all your schools complete this as part of their school improvement process or some version of that, you'll be able to just do one quick glance and see how all of your schools scored as part of that. For charters, you will see the same thing as the average scores as well, but just for your school as well. But again, just to go back to Jenny's point, we are only asking, as part of that school board initiative, we are only requiring, or not requiring, but inviting LEAs to fill it out and charters to fill it out. So, you do not have to have every school in your district fill it out, but we wanted to have that option if you so chose. So that's available from the reports, and that's my last screen in terms of how to operate this. I will click on the charter just so we can look at that as well. Charters work the same way, same process. Now, some of the bullets are a little bit different in here just because of the way charters work. You'll notice on the data and assessment, there's 2 components versus 3 on the LEA. So there is some differences between the 2 rubrics, which is part of the reason that Jenny talked about that we're trying to revise the scoring process. We want to make sure that when we give an overall score for the whole rubric and deem an LEA or a school developing advanced or target, that we're able to compare apples to apples and provide a consistent scoring process across the rubric. So again, once we jump in here, we'll be able to click on the reports. And right now, you see on my screen, I have a little bit different screen report than you do. Eventually, right now, all you have access to is the summary by descriptor reports. But when I log in, you'll notice that I do have access to some additional reports that are coming. We just want to make sure that our scoring rules work for the state. So this is the report I was telling you about, like for Anson County. Once we have those rules in place and an official scoring, you'll be able to see all the schools in your state or district and see how they've scored there as well. And then you'll have a summary by item type and a summary by descriptor and things like that. So we do have reports ready. We just want to make sure that the scoring process that we have proposed fits for the state and is what you guys need across the state. Do you guys have any questions at this time, either on getting access or how the rubric works online? Just as a note, in terms of access, it's the same roles as the DLMI. So you have your LEA, charter, and school administrators, who are the folks who are responsible for typing in the data. And then your principals have access. And then you have what we call inquiry-only roles. And so if you have folks that want to have view access to this rubric, they would need an inquiry-based role, and that wouldn't allow them to type in data. And we still are going to request roles through the DLMI system. So if you have any questions on that, we can follow up with that as well. But you will still request access based on the DLMI and through that system. We are in line to upgrade or update the system moving from NCID over to the EdCloud. We are one of the statewide applications that's in the process of being updated. So when that happens, we'll let you know. It probably won't happen by the June 30th deadline. But that is coming as well. So any questions? Jenny is still on the line if you have questions about the process or the steering committee. We'll give you guys a few minutes to answer questions or comments. Jenny, we do have one comment that's come in that there's a recommendation that in addition to the NC TIES and NC COSN board that we should also include the North Carolina School Library Medias Association, the NC SLAMA, as well. And
yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think.
Nope, I think that's great. I will change the slide deck right now.
Yep.
NC SLMA, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, perfect. That's great feedback. Thank you. It may be 3, 1 from each.
Yep.
NCSOMA.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. If you guys think of questions that you want answered, our contact information is on the slide deck as well. So if you think of something that's not, as you're filling it out or as you're going through the process, if there's something that comes up, we will be glad to answer those questions. Since the official data isn't due until June the 30th, I think we had on the one slide the May through August timeline for the steering committee. I think once we have a official scoring process in place that's sort of voted on and approved by that committee, we'll reach back out and send that out via email to the superintendents and tech directors listservs like we did for this notice on this webinar, and make sure you guys know as soon as we do what the final decision is on that as well. Jenny, any final comments?
That's it. We appreciate everybody's time this morning.
And like I said, I will send out a recording of this webinar and the link to the actual rubric itself this afternoon. And if you guys have any questions, just let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to end the webinar. You guys have a great week, and we will be on the lookout for that email this afternoon. Thanks, Jenny, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you all.